Is my business model feasible? It's a question you should be asking yourself because if you're legitimately going to start a business, a small business, you want to know that you have a good, likely, successful chance of it being profitable. So, one of the goals of market research, especially for starting out, is to determine if the business model is feasible or will be profitable in the market for that industry. So, the steps that we did before is defining your industry and then choosing a market that you're going to go into and then designing your product for the target market. That's why creating that business model, and especially a lean business model, is really important because you can't have enough resources to make every single customer happy. Yes, it is true that every customer within a market could potentially purchase your product or service, but you don't want to design a product or service that would make everyone happy because oftentimes when you do that, you either spend too much money designing that product or service because you're putting on a lot of things, extra things that, or features that customers don't really want. And when you do that, it makes it more expensive. So they're either going to want to pay a lower price, and that directly affects your profitability. So the feasibility is hopefully defining what is it the lean business model that you're going to go into and identifying the target market that you can give them, those customers, a smaller subset of the total market. You can give them the product or service and you can make them really happy at the price that they want, at the price that you can make a profit in your business. So it's kind of this process you go through to find the perfect fit. So how do you know if your idea is feasible? So some of the things you want to ask yourself are, how many competitors are there in your marketplace? And so this is where you have that boundary. You want to define the number of competitors in there. The wider the boundary you make, the harder it is to find some competition. So you may not be able to know exactly how many competitors there are, but you want to put yourself in the shoes or mind of the customer that could potentially buy your product and say, what are the top 3 choices other than my business that a customer might use in order to satisfy their problem or fix their pain? Okay, so it can be tough to answer. This is why you choose, as a market research process, to focus on the top 3 choices that somebody could choose, and you go from there. So you want to compare your product offering, your service offering, your business opportunity, compare it, your opportunity, to those 3 businesses. And what I would suggest to you when you're picking the 3 businesses to compare to, pick the ones that are not exactly the same. And you also may pick, as one of the alternatives, is a choice where the customer decides to do it themselves. So for example, if you're a restaurant or a coffee shop, you might say, okay, one of my competitors is a coffee shop right down the street. Another one is a really, really nice one that's a few miles away, a little bit further away, that's really expensive. And maybe as a third option, the customer would make coffee at home. Okay, so there's 3 choices that the customer has. And what you want to do is try to determine what is the unique value. What is the real reason that that customer would go to that restaurant or that coffee shop? And so a good way is to define what are the features that business is offering, and then examine those compared to the one that you're planning. So one is the product itself. So just examine what is the product that they're actually offering. This is a little bit harder to describe when you're talking about an experience like a coffee shop or a restaurant, because the product isn't just the food, it's the atmosphere, it's the service, all those things. But those are the things you want to describe and analyze when you describe the product itself. The second is typically the price. And then I encourage you to think of 3 other features that you would want to consider when you put yourself into the customer's shoes or position. What are the features that would impact their decision on going to this specific business to satisfy their need? And so those features typically are the quality of the product or service, the convenience of it or the speed it takes to get, and also the reputation. So those are 3 features that I always suggest are important. So the quality, speed, reputation. That combined with the product itself and the price, that will give you a good start to completing a market competition research. Next is to ask a question, describe the customers within the target market and your target market. So the customers are the people that are in this boundary that you've created, real or imagined boundary, and you want to identify first that boundary, and then the next is the number of total customers in the market, and then you want to kind of split those customers into segments. And there's lots of ways to do this segmentation, is what they call it, but easy way is you might do it by age, you might do it by male versus female, you might have a product that's specific to targeted towards women, you might have it targeted to kids, you might have it targeted to people like to play tennis or people that like to drink coffee. All the total customers are in that market, but not everyone likes to play tennis. So what are the total number of potential customers in your market, and what are the total number of customers that play tennis that are in your market? So for example, if you're selling tennis rackets, that's what you would want to know, right, if you're competing in that marketplace. So the customers in your target market, these are your best customers. This is where you want to focus your energy. This is where you want to customize your product or service to make them happy. This describes your ideal customers within your target market. And as I said before, you can talk about their demographics. You might talk about how much money they make or the free income that they have to spend. You might talk about where they live. You might talk about why they want to buy things, right? Or why they're motivated to buy things. And the final is projecting financial costs, which we will talk about in another video.